Hi, I'm Keith Weiner, CEO of Monetary Metals. The question today is, what do Americans know about money? Let me start by telling a little story. Way back when, our ancestors rose up from the level of subsistence. So when they're subsisting, that means that no one produces a surplus beyond what he needs to eat for dinner, and therefore nobody could trade with anybody else. But at a certain point, their knowledge improves, their uses of tools improve a little bit, and then there's a surplus, which means somebody can trade with somebody else. That, of course, leads to specialization, division of labor. One person can make the leather moccasins, the other person can pull fish out of the river, for example. And so then they have trade. That's an enormous improvement in quality of life. Some people, of course, become better at farming, some people become better at hunting, and so forth. Fairly early, they run into a problem, which is called the coincidence of wants. Let's say you're the guy that makes the leather moccasins, you're hungry, you go to the guy that pulls the fish out of the river and says, I would like to do a trade, just as we did yesterday. And of course, the fisherman, says, well, unfortunately, I have all the leather moccasins I need, thanks very much. Society has a problem at that point. Of course, the guy who makes the leather moccasins has an even bigger problem, and that is, he has to find some way of trading his leather moccasins for food. Now, he may not be able to do that, and so progress is stalled until they figure out the solution, which is they can use some good indirectly. So he trades the leather moccasins for something else, for example, grain, even if he doesn't necessarily want the raw grain, but he knows that he can trade the grain for the fish that he wants at the end of the day. And so this intermediate good, this indirect trade, then makes commerce even more possible than it was before. So as this evolves, people are using this intermediate good. What is this intermediate good? What are the characteristics that it must have? The term that economists use is marketability. You go from a less marketable good, such as leather moccasins, to a more marketable good, such as wheat. Well, over the course of probably thousands of years, they figure out the order of marketability, that some goods, leather moccasins, may be low on the totem pole, wheat, salt was more marketable because, of course, salt doesn't perish, grains perish, you can have bugs and rats and so forth. And eventually people discovered gold. Gold to this day survives as the most marketable good. And if you notice, even in the markets today, gold trades with the tightest bid-ask spread, which is another way of looking at marketability. The spread in gold is somewhere between 10 and 30 cents per ounce during normal trading hours, which is remarkable given how expensive gold is. So, getting back to the average American, what happened in 1913 was they created the Federal Reserve, which began to pervert and distort the nature of money. In 1933, President Roosevelt, of course by executive order, confiscated gold, and in 1971, the last tie between the dollar and gold was severed. So if you ask an American in 1910, what is money, he would have taken out of his pocket and shown you this. If you ask an American today, what is money, he would take out of his pocket this piece of paper. And of course, the person in 1910 had a word for this piece of paper that the American today calls money, and that word would have been banknote. So, to conclude, I went and did a search on Google Images, figuring that Google is just simply sensitive to the preferences of all the consumers who use search engines. I did a search and I typed in money to see what picture I would get for money. This is the top 4 results for money, and they're all green pieces of paper. So to answer the question, what does the average American know about money? The answer is jack.